Everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for this special p.g.a. conversation with the creative team behind Weird, the Al Yankovic Story. My name is Diana White. I'm the Director of Programs and Events at the Producers Guild, and I'd love to start off by thanking Roku for making this conversation today possible. Joining us today, we have producer, writer, and music producer Al Yankovic, producer Mike Farah, and producer Lia Buman. All three producers also received the producer's mark, I'd just like to mention. And leading their conversation, I'm pleased to welcome Scott Mantz. Scott is an Emmy-nominated producer and entertainment journalist whose credits include Access Hollywood, Entertainment Tonight, and CNN. He is currently a contributing writer for Variety, the weekly film critic for KTLA TV, and a year-round moderator for FYC Q&As. Thank you, Scott, for being here. Take it away.
Well, thank you so much. I am very excited as a longtime fan going back to the 80s. I saw this movie. I was so excited to see this film at the midnight screening at the Toronto International Film Festival. And the energy in the room was off the hook. But I got to start off by asking Al, like, how did this come about? And specifically, how long ago did this come about?
It started as a Funny or Die video in 2010. Eric Appel, who directed the feature, also directed the original Funny or Die short. And he approached me. He had just seen the Biggie Smalls biopic, and he was struck by how not entirely true it was. And he thought it would be a funny bit to do a fake trailer for a biopic that didn't exist. And he thought that I would be a good subject for that biopic because my life has famously been very non-controversial and kind of boring, and I'm still alive on top of that. So he approached me. He didn't want to do it, without getting my blessing, and I thought it was such a fantastic idea that I jumped on board to collaborate with him on the Funny or Die bit. And we both thought that that was the end of it, that, okay, it's a Funny or Die piece. People love it. It went viral. And in fact, I used it in my live show because it's a multimedia show, and when I go backstage to do costume changes, we have a video on the big screen, and that was one of the videos we played. And for years after the show, people would come up to me and say, "When's the movie coming out?" And we'd say, "No, it's just a bit. It's just a bit. It's just what it's, it's a fake trailer." And they say, "Oh no, it should be a movie." And for the longest time, I agreed with them. I'm like, it is what it's supposed to be. And then about 3 years ago, it felt like it was the right time because Bohemian Rhapsody had just come out to great acclaim. I think Rocket Man was just about to come out. It felt like biopics were just starting to come back. And also, again, just kind of throwing facts out the windows. Like they didn't really pay attention to chronology, or everything was in service of telling this dramatic story, whether it was true or not. So I thought, well, maybe we can do a Weird Al biopic, but really totally go off the rails. That's the only way it could possibly work.
Yeah, I remember when I was watching Rocket Man, and that moment in Rocket Man where he gets his name and he looks at a picture of the Beatles and sees John Lennon. Everybody was like, "Oh my God, he named it John Lennon." And he's like, "No, I didn't." But that was like a tipping point because your film leans into all of that. So Lia, like, what were the first conversations you had about sort of reverse engineering a film, a feature-length film out of a trailer?
Well, by the time we got involved, the script had already been written by Al and Eric. So the process of reverse engineering had already taken place in the script. And for us, when we as Tango got involved, it was really just about like bringing the vision to life. It was the engineering had already happened. So I can't really speak to that part.
Well, Mike, obviously, I mean, with Eric, working with Al on the trailer, what made him, for obvious reasons or beyond obvious reasons, the perfect person to direct the feature?
Oh yeah, no, Eric was a huge part of the whole journey. I when we did a panel earlier for the film, I actually sent him the original email with the idea from like 2009. And I think, to Al's point, I think it eventually came out in 2010. I think I just wrote back like, "This is amazing. We have to do it." And I felt that exact same way throughout every chapter of this process. Because initially Al and Eric had a pitch, and we were really confident with the pitch because we had this viral video. We had Al And I'd say in every meeting, sometimes in front of Al and sometimes afterwards, I was just like, you realize he is like living, walking intellectual property in comedy. This does not happen. Like this is a conversation of one, right? And so we had a pitch, and Al, I think you'd agree, the pitch was very similar to the script that you guys ended up writing, and we couldn't get any bites on the pitch. And to Al and Eric's credit, they wrote the script on spec. And so then with that script, that's what we sent to a whole host of companies. Lia and her partner Max and Tim at Tango were the only smart ones that received that script, and they joined the team and were just so instrumental in exactly what Lia said in helping us bring the vision to life.
Well, Al, when you and Eric were really kind of fleshing out the screenplay, how much of that first pass at the screenplay wound up making it to the screen, or were there a lot of changes that went along the way? Because you certainly have a lot of cameos and appearances in the movie that are really inspired.
There are obviously changes that were made from the original draft to the screen, mostly because of budget, because our budget in the days we were able to shoot kept getting smaller and smaller. But in essence, the story that we pitched was the story that we made. There were actually, Michael alluded to it, there are three basic times we went out to try to sell the movie. The first time we had the video and we had proof of concept, basically, like it's this, but it's a movie, and we didn't have any bites. And then Eric and I basically came up with the outline so that in the room we could basically pitch the entire movie in the room. And that, I guess I'm sorry.
No, it's because you're so dewy. The dewy
I'm so dewy.
From your dewy face onto the screen.
So the second round was, we had the outline we got to go through and just basically describe the entire movie, and that wasn't working. So Eric and I finally decided to do the script, and I went back and I read the original draft of the script, and it really wasn't so far off from what we actually shot. Again, some things like there was a montage sequence that would have taken days to shoot, which we cut out, and little things, little things here and there that didn't really affect the comedy or the story that much, and we were able to tighten it up and shoot it in 18 days. But we didn't have to make any huge sacrifices, thankfully.
And I think, Scott, just because there's a lot of producers watching this, hopefully that bears repeating. The film was shot in 18 days. And at one point, Lia, you lived it more than I did. I mean, also the shooting hours got lessened as you got closer to that 18 days.
We were doing 10-hour days,
10-hour days instead of 12-hour.
Okay, 18 days. How do you make a film in 18 days that looks like a big budget feature film? I don't know who wants to take that question and go with it, but Lee, I'm going to start with you.
I think it first starts with an incredible director who is up for the challenge and who is very good at making decisions, who is very good at knowing what, because Al and Eric were in lockstep on every kind of, as what Al just said, like just creating the script. There were so many things that were just clear yeses or nos of what could and couldn't work when you do location scouting, when you do costumes, when you have any kind of casting. Like it was just a very, very decisive process. And that it sets the tone for just being able to be efficient going forward. But also it sets the tone for understanding what our bar is for the decisions and what we're in service of. We are in service of comedy and we are in service of taking it seriously. And Eric just that was just always the decision tree. And then it's the crew. We had a very, very deep and deep in the sense of the reason that you could do 18 days was because our crew was pretty big. It wasn't a normal indie film kind of crew. It was a deep crew. It was a lot of people, so that the setups went really quick because you just had people always setting up for the next and setting up for the next and setting up for the next. So we weren't sitting around too much. There really wasn't a lot of sitting around forever for Radcliffe, really. Daniel was the heart and soul of it. He's the other reason why it was possible to accomplish in 18 days, because he took it so seriously. We were always in service of the comedy, but we took everything extremely seriously every step of the way. So those are my three reasons.
I just want to jump in. I want to second everything that Lia said, but I also want to say that we got so many comments from the crew that it was the best and calmest set they ever worked on. There, everybody was so nice, and that came
Yeah.
from Eric, and that came from our first AD, Emily Newman. That came from Dan. Everybody involved in the project. And considering the time restraints and the budget restraints we're under, it's quite an achievement to pull everything off and not make everybody crazy. And it was a joy to be on that set.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, just watching the film, I mean, you could just tell that everyone was having like a grand time. But Mike, I also want to ask about the cinematographer, Ross. I don't want to butcher his last name, but your cinematographer was real top notch too.
He was, the whole crew was. It's kind of like what what Lia and Al have been saying. Everyone just really bought into the vision. Everyone is so excited to be there. Everyone just had so much love for Al and his career. All those celebrity cameos that you saw, those are all Al's friends, just, you know, just wanting to be a part of this moment. And so it was just like one of those beautiful instances where like everything was kind of coming together. Once we finally found a home with Roku, and Roku has to get a lot of credit because they were the financier who finally said yes. Once we got through all of those challenges, then as crazy as it sounds, the 18-day shooting schedule is kind of like nothing compared to like what the previous like 3 years that we had gone through, and just, you know, so many rejections and so many just kind of like close but not quite there. So Roku, to their credit, stepped up. Ross was amazing. The whole crew was amazing, and I think you can really feel that joy when you watch the film.
Oh yeah, for sure. So like, let me ask you, who came first, Roku or Daniel Radcliffe?
Radcliffe.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right. So you're talking about casting Al Yankovic, who is so well known and beloved, and why Daniel? What made Daniel the perfect Al Yankovic? Al.
Well, I got asked that question a lot because when that was first announced, a lot of fans were like, "But he's British and he doesn't look like you, and he's got blue eyes," and like, and it's not about that. Daniel had the right energy, and he had the right acting chops for it, and he just he does comedy extremely well. He does drama very well. He's done the things he's done post Potter. And really showcase that. He's gone to some very dark places and done some very seriously dramatic work. And the choices he made after Harry Potter also spoke to that, because he has gone out of his way to say, look, I'm up for doing weird stuff. and we thought the movie would be right up his alley.
Well, okay. So when it came to casting Daniel, like, what kind of prep did he do? Did he learn how to play the accordion? You know, how in was he that by the time that you really got into filming, you're like, oh my God, we totally lucked out with this guy. Lia, why don't you take that?
Well, I would like Al to speak about the accordion work, but there was a lot of accordion work. He did take lessons, and then on top of that, he worked on the choreography for the big stage scenes and the performances, and he also this is all in prep, like before any cameras rolled, he also did a lot of training for the stunt scenes, because that's all choreography too. So he did dancing choreography, stunt choreography, and accordion work all before. And I don't know, like, I think he honestly, like, he should be credited with a lot, not just with starring in it, but just like pulling it. Al's right, like, it was his energy the entire time is why he was never, you know, he was in almost every, except for the early Al, like little Al and teenage Al. Radcliffe is in every scene, and his energy never dipped.
Yeah.
It was always at 10 or more. And so yeah, he was all in, and he did a ton of work before. But Al, do you want to talk about the accordion?
Yeah, and since you brought up the stunt choreography, I just want to point out that entire fight scene in the diner, 4 hours. Everything was done on either 1 or 2 takes. It was just boom, boom, boom.
And that was all because he was ready. That was all
And
because of the prep that he did.
we would not have been able to pull off the movie unless Daniel was extremely well prepared, and he was. He showed up. He knew his marks. He knew the lines. He knew what to do. Amazing. And as far as the accordion, I remember our very first Zoom call. I'd never met Daniel Radcliffe in my life, and Eric and I were on a Zoom call with Eric to see if he wanted to be in the movie. And by the end of the call, he was like, "What kind of accordion should I buy so I can start practicing?" Just before it was sold, before anything, it was like, "I want to start right now." So he worked with a friend of his named Peter in New York initially, and then when he came to LA, I gave him several lessons, and he didn't have to learn how to play the accordion because Eric told him, "Look, we can shoot around it, we can make it look like you're playing the accordion." But he thought, if I'm playing Weird Al, I have to at least sort of know how to play the accordion. So when you see him on screen, for the 3 or 4 people that actually know, he's playing the right buttons.
Unbelievable.
It's
He's
true.
really good. He's really good. So the first time I saw the movie, I didn't know, in terms of the cast about who was playing who beyond Daniel. And I'm watching the film the first time going, God, Madonna, that actress is really good. And then I realized it was Evan Rachel Wood. I'm like, what? How did that come about? I mean, Mike, how did that casting come about?
We were super excited about the idea of Evan, and we sent her the material, and she responded. I think she would. I think I heard some interviews, Al, and maybe you were with her when she said she was just like so blown away that she was being offered the role of Madonna, and then she saw kind of like the other auspices that were involved, and it was a pretty quick turnaround. She read the material and she was available, and as we all know, as all producers know, like when someone likes the material and they're available, you just like get the deal done.
Yeah.
And we were able to do it, and she was just a part of just an incredible ensemble. But Dan and Evan's chemistry together is just fantastic.
Well, I wanted to ask about the chemistry, when they first got together and you saw just how good they were together, Lia, were you just like, man, we lucked out?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite moments of production, Al, I don't know if you remember this moment, but it's that first scene with Evan. And I mean, this isn't quite an answer to your question, but I can't not bring it up, is she right, you knew that they had their first meeting, but it was just with Eric, and I had heard that it was really, that the vibe was right and the vibe was good. But then the first scene happened, and it's when he opens the door and she's at the door frame and she comes in and she did this twirl, which I don't think is actually the final take that we put in the film. But I looked over at Al, and I think I had tears in my eyes, and I think, Al, you may have had tears in your eyes, but more from just we couldn't be loud because it was a quiet set. So we were like, ah! And I just remember that you kind of knew it was right anyway when you saw the hair and makeup and costume and everything. But when the two of them were on set together for the very first take, it was just undeniable that it was absolutely right. And that is one of my favorite memories of my career, is looking at Al and being, because there was no one else. I was looking for someone, and I think Al was also looking for someone to go. And so we both were together doing this, and it was it was great. Their chemistry was palpable, and it was from the first shot, it was fantastic.
Yeah, like you said, it was their first scene, and they never met each other before, except for the night. Thankfully, Eric took them out to dinner the night before to kind of get them comfortable. But yeah, the very first scene, first day, full on making out. That was the first thing.
By the way, just like the John Lennon thing from Rocket Man, I remember people saying after the screening, wow, Al and Madonna, I'm like, did you not see the movie? I mean,
we got such a kick out of that. It was a big Google search the next day after the trailer came out. Did Al and Madonna really?
It's hilarious. Okay. So the first time, Al, that you saw Daniel walk onto the set, or maybe just during a costume rehearsal kind of thing, but the first time you saw Daniel dressed up and made up as Al Yankovic, what was that like for each one of you, especially you, Al?
Yeah, it was surrealistic. I mean, I've seen people dressed up as me before. It's a very popular Halloween costume among certain people, actually. But to see Daniel Radcliffe dressed up like me, it was pretty crazy. I mean, especially to do scenes with him. Our second day on set was me as the record producer, record company president, berating Dan dressed like me, and that was just an out of body experience to be like, screaming at this like 80s version of myself. It was pretty crazy.
So you produced the film in 18 days. What period of time did you actually make this movie?
February into March, was it, Mike?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
February and March of this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
In
Yeah,
LA.
it got greenlit in January this year, and we shot it and edited it, and it came out. It was at TIFF September 8th, and came out on Roku November 4th.
Unreal. So, okay, that opens up a whole slew of questions. And because producers are watching this this conversation, Mike, in addition to just the challenges of filming a movie in 18 days by any measure, what were the challenges of doing it while we're still in COVID times, while you're got the green light in January and you filmed the movie so fast? What were the unique producing challenges that you all faced with getting this onto the screen at the Toronto Film Festival by September 8th?
Yeah.
Well, where to begin? Where to begin, Scott? The most harrowing thought was that if we had any COVID shutdowns, we were going to lose Daniel because his schedule was so tight going into his next project. Right. So I don't know how Al and Lia chose to respond to that. I just chose to ignore all of that and like not pay attention to anything COVID and just live in my own fantasy land of having no positives. And we were fortunate. I do think some productions are just graced by the movie gods. And I think this is one of them, because if we had gotten one positive, we'd be having a very different conversation. And I think Al and Lia, correct me if I'm wrong, but Aaron Paul said publicly the story, right?
Yeah, you can tell that.
So, and the craziest thing is that Aaron Paul, who had played Al in the original Funny or Die video, was very, not, I won't say close, but he was going to come on and be a cameo in the movie, like so many other people were. And he was actually hanging out with Dan as he is waiting for his test, his rapid test to come back, and came back as positive. And so the only positive was really Aaron Paul. And so Aaron had to say goodbye. He couldn't be in the movie. And then there were like those few days where we're just like, oh, wait, Aaron Paul, let's not have that scenario happen. And it didn't. And so thank goodness. It was just like one of those things that was, we were fortunate. There's always an element of luck in every production coming together. And I think perhaps Funny or Die cashed in a decent amount of our 2023 luck in that specific window.
What about you, Lia? What were some of the challenges that you felt you were tough?
I don't know if they were, I think this one would have been tough if we didn't have Al. The music clearance was a thing that definitely was not just the whole, like, Al is the music producer of the film, and if we didn't have his kind of ability to know what was ahead of us in terms of performance and, the mix and just everything that was ahead of us in terms of on-camera performances of the music, that would have been impossible to have achieved within the 18 days. And the reason that it worked was because, so many reasons. One is that Al did, I've never seen before, Al did a timing of what the musical scenes would actually entail. Like, I don't know how to explain it, Al. I don't want to talk about your own work, but it helped me so much, so I'm talking about it. But is it like, can I say that you timed it out? You timed out the music in the script. And so that allowed us to be very specific about pre-clearing the music before we before we were greenlit. I started the process of trying to clear the music because we needed to know what was and wasn't possible, because almost everything is on camera that we cleared. Very little is like just radio, or like everything is like addressed or performed or referred to, or all the same things. So that was a big challenge that I think we overcame because of Al's ability to just kind of know that things were a problem before they ended up being a problem. And then and maybe it was me just saying, I'm clearing this now, not knowing whether or not it's cleared. Yeah, I think that was a challenge that we didn't actually end up having to overcome. That was just something we got ahead of.
All right, so here's my question. This may sound like a naive question, but Al, this is your music, this is your movie. What made clearing the music so difficult?
I don't own the publishing on my parodies. Tradition every parody is a different deal, but traditionally and historically, the original songwriters keep the publishing, and then we split the writer's percentage. But which means that they actually control it. So it was there was a little bit of miscommunication. I was under the impression before we started shooting that all of the parodies have been cleared, and then after we had basically a final cut of the movie, I was told, "Oh, now we have to make sure that the Michael Jackson estate and the Queen estate are fine with this." And I was like, "What?" And it turns out they had final say, because I mean, if they didn't like some of them in the movie, they could say, "Oh, well, then you can't use your song because we own the publishing." And there was about a week when I was just like, severe diarrhea. It was just, I was so nervous because I thought, oh, something horrible is going to happen. They're going to completely rip this movie apart. And it wound up, we were asked to take out one line about Michael Jackson, and Queen was fine. And it worked out, but there was definitely a few days where I was losing my mind thinking, oh, the movie is going to get destroyed.
Wow.
But the approach that we took, because it is true that you get something cleared, but then they get to see it again, because that's just, they have to match the use of the song to the actual description that you cleared it under, because otherwise, it could end up being a lot of different things. And I think it helped us because the movie ended up being so joyful and buoyant and just positive and all in good fun, that once they saw what the actual movie was and what the tone of it wasn't a problem. But I was, while Al was having diarrhea, I was in the fetal position in my house, just being please, please. So
and I knew it was always going to work out. So that's how we.
Farah would never. Farah was like, "What are you talking about? It's fine." And I'm like, "Oh my god!" But I think the movie, other than Al, I think the movie was our biggest asset in that process at the end.
How did you get these cameos, these supporting actors? I'm Jack Black, Lin-Manuel Miranda, Thomas Lennon. I mean, it's the motherlode. Especially, Jack Black is hilarious as Wolfman Jack. How, especially because the production was only 18 days, how did you get all these people to join the party, so to speak?
I was sort of the unofficial casting director for that party scene. I got to go through my address book and make a list for Eric and said, "Oh, who should he have play what, and who should I reach out to?" And we were and it was basically narrowed it down because there were a lot of friends that wanted to be in the movie, but it had to be on that particular day at that particular time. So there was that limitation. And some people, I mean, like Lin-Manuel Miranda, literally within half an hour of the movie getting announced on Deadline, I got a text from Lin saying, "What am I going to play?" So I was like, "What are you going to be in LA? We'll let you know."
Yeah, we really did. We did kind of, Al's right. We found out when the most people were going to be available, and then we kind of built around that, also based on what other things we had going on. But that pool scene was like a tent pole of our schedule, and different people's availabilities affected where that tent pole stood.
Sure.
And then other people like Lynn or I'm just trying to think of other, I can't remember, or Roban, right? We just kind of, once we knew when they were available, then we worked with Al and Eric to make sure that they were right for the scene. That was shooting that day that they were available.
Sure. How long, Mike, how long was the first cut of the movie?
I mean, I don't know, Al, maybe we trimmed over the course of post, maybe 12 to 15 minutes, something like that.
That feels about right. Yeah.
Yeah. So the finished product is about an hour and 50 minutes. Right.
Sure.
And so, yeah, so it's probably just a little north of 2 hours, that first cut. And that was also one of the, intended or unintended benefits of such a short shooting schedule, and Eric Appel being so decisive in prep and on the day, that there was never going to be that much fat.
How long before September 8th, when you had your world premiere, did you lock your print?
Oh, well, we thought we had a locked print and then we had to change it. I couldn't tell you exactly how. I want to say maybe about a month. Does that sound about right,
Oh.
you guys?
I think it was like, we didn't go too, I think it was July, like late July.
Like, okay, yeah, right, yeah. 'Cause
No,
all the
not even. I
scoring-
think it was like mid-July. I think it
Was
was
it?
actually mid-July. And then we did a lot, like there was a lot of sound afterwards. We
you're
actually
right,
wanted
you're
to
right.
have a lot of space for the sound mix and for the color, because some of our stuff's
Yeah.
outside and we wanted to make sure. So
That sounds
we,
right.
yeah, we had a lot of, we had more than you would, because it's essentially a type of musical. There was a lot of sound post work.
So what was it like, last year, 2021, the Toronto Film Festival was there, but it was very, I guess, muted. Of course, the year before that, it was like totally virtual. But, this year, 2022, TIFF was totally back. Your film is premiering there, a midnight screening, which is always off the hook. So what was it like to have the film there and the reaction you had? Al, starting with you.
It was one of the best moments of my life. It was the energy was just off the charts. They literally had a Weird Al flash mob outside the red carpet doing this choreographed routine to, I think, I Love Rocky Road, yeah, everybody just so excited, and it was the perfect audience because some fans had flown from around the world to be at this particular screening. And the Midnight Madness audiences, like you said, are some of the best in the world. So there could not have been a better audience for the movie. And I recorded it on my phone just so I'd always have an audio recording of the audience response. It was something I'll always treasure.
Lia, what was that like for you and Mike?
I don't know, I can't speak for Mike, but I was just incredibly proud. I just, I was just incredibly proud, not even for myself, but for everyone that worked on it. I could see that Al was happy, and that matters to me a lot. And I was very happy for Appel, because I think that's something I wanted for him, is like to launch him as a feature film director. And so happy for Radcliffe, because I know that he he's someone who he cares so much about his work, and I wanted him to feel pride and like get a good response. So like I was just really happy for everybody. I really was.
How about you, Mike?
Yeah, everything they said. I just think it's it's those rare moments in your career where both at Toronto and then throughout, the response has just been so joyous, and there's just so much fun, and people just got to escape, for that hour and 50 minutes and celebrate the music and the man and the myth and everything else that we came up with, that Appel and Al came up with. So it's very gratifying, especially after the journey, right? Of there were just, nothing is easy, right? And I think also this is a particularly challenging moment in comedy, just because comedy isn't really valued at the theater anymore. And it's also less and less valued as just like these streamers get more global and consolidated all at the same time. And so it was, and also I've worked for many years with Billy Eichner, and because we produced Billy on the Street. So Weird and Bros premiered back to back. We were opening night, they were the second night. So it just was like a really nice moment for comedy coming out of TIFF. That kind of just, reminds people, yeah, there's like a lot of good, filmmaking and just good for humanity in the soul, like comedy that needs to be made. And I think if we get through, this next year of whatever is going to happen, I think comedy is poised for a huge, huge comeback.
For sure. And just Al, I just want to ask one last question about Roku. What made Roku the perfect partner for Weird, the Al Yankovic Story?
They were the only ones that bought it. but beyond that, I mean, they actually wound up being the perfect partner because, for one thing, they let us make the movie we wanted to make. They gave us notes, but oddly enough, their notes were all really good. I'm not used to getting like good notes from studios, and their notes were like, Eric and I were like, yeah, that makes sense. So that was nice. And also, because it was on Roku, we knew we wouldn't get lost in the shuffle. If this had been on one of the other streamers, we would have been part of their schedule. and it would have gotten seen. But I mean, with Roku, we were sort of a big deal for them, and they were a big deal for us, and we wanted to see each other succeed, and they really made us a priority. I mean, we are a big deal for them in terms of being a Roku original, so they put a lot of energy and love and support behind this movie, and I'm eternally grateful for that.
Well, big congrats to all of you for the success of We're the Al Yankovic Story. Thank you so much for this conversation. And thank you for everyone from the Producers Guild watching this conversation. All the best and see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.